around farming. You're a first century farmer. In fact, you're a first century Jewish farmer. Man, you're out in your field one day, and man, you're working as hard as you can. You'd been through some tough times and some difficult times, but you know that with just the simple tools in your hand and with your field, you can work hard enough from sun up to sundown to put food on the table for your family, to provide a home for them. And so you're out there working as hard as you can. Well, as the sun begins to go down, you begin to look over the horizon at the road that's often traveled near your home. And as you look over there, you begin to see the sun dance off what appears to be in a metallic object heading towards you. And as that object continues to head towards you, you realize that, man, there's somebody walking down the road. And as you begin to look and to see who might be traveling down the road near your house, you all of a sudden become a little bit angry as you begin to recognize who they are. You see that sunlight dancing off the metal is that of a helmet worn by a Roman soldier who would don on himself armor that was made out of iron and strips of leather. He would have a large rectangular sword that was curved at the bottom that he would use to protect himself. He would carry with him a javelin, a long spear, which he would throw at folks. And then his weapon of choice would have been a short sword, a dagger for stabbing at his enemies. And here he comes walking down your road. You make eye contact with him, but you keep working the field. And then all of a sudden, anger begins to boil up inside of you. You see, that soldier represents a government who cares nothing for you. That soldier and what he represents is oppression. In fact, that soldier has absolutely no respect for you as a farmer and certainly has no respect for your religion as a Jew. In fact, they view you as nothing more than a dog. And he continues to walk your way. You begin tilling up that dirt as hard as you know how. You're angry. You're having that conversation in your mind. And here's what you say in your mind. You ready? He better not. Here's what you're saying in your mind about it. He better not stop and talk to me. He better watch out. And then what used to be far off in the distance, he now is just a few feet away. And you won't even make eye contact with him. You despise his very existence. All of a sudden, you're turning over the dirt. And you feel the weight of his shield hit you in the back of the legs. You hear the metal slam down to the ground of his javelin and his sword. His helmet rolls around in front of you as he threw it on the ground, and his armor is laid right next to your feet. He says, "Hey, Jew, and I want you to carry this for the next mile." In your mind, you start thinking, how dare you? Who do you think you are? Hey, listen, you don't know who I am. That I'm going to stop what I'm doing to carry your junk for a mile. But you know what? The law compels you that if he asks you, you got to carry his baggage 1,000 paces or a Roman mile. With all the anger, the indignation, the humiliation of having to carry this enemy's armor, you pick up his armor that he puts over his chest, man, and it stinks of war. You pick up that helmet, and you soon beat him with it as you would carry it. You pick up that javelin and think, man, I ought to just chunk it at him. You pick up a sword and think, man, I hope he falls on this thing. And you pick up everything he has, pound after pound of equipment. And because compelled by law, you start walking. But you know what? You're not going to walk beside him because you want nothing to do with him. You walk a few paces behind him. You're carrying all this stuff as he walks carefree with the smuggle without any care for you. And he just continues to walk. And here you are, just a few paces behind him. And the hatred boils up. The bitterness is biting inside of you. And you are fuming. And as you're walking down the road, you're walking pace after pace. You look up in the distance. And after about 15 minutes of walking, you see a mile marker on the side of the road. And you know that you're coming up to the 1 mile by law you're compelled to do. And the whole time you're wishing he'd trip up. You're wishing in his next battle somebody take him out. You're cursing him in your mind. In your mind you have disdain for him. And you see finally the finish line there. You finally see the mile marker, and you take all of his baggage, all of his armor, all of his stuff, and you decide, I'm not taking one step further. When I get that line, man, I'm throwing it all down. And I ain't even looking at him walking away. And that's exactly what you do. You throw it down without a thank you or anything. You walk the 1,000 paces back to your field, and man, you are just wore out. Well, the next day, you hear of somebody coming into town that's kind of a big deal. You heard about this man. His name is Jesus, and he's a miracle worker. And you know what Jesus decides to take the hillside, and there he's going to teach his disciples and folks that follow up really what it is to live the godly life. You heard a lot of things about him, and so you know what? You can get your work done a little bit earlier, stay a little bit later. I'm going to walk over to the hillside. I'm going to hear this guy named Jesus. In fact, he might even take care of these old Romans we hate so much. So you go over to the hillside and you see him. And you sit amidst all his disciples and people. And this guy named Jesus begins to talk about how it is that you and I can live a life that honors God. How you and I can live a life that is poured out of self and really gives honor and glory to God himself. And listen to part of his sermon. If you have your Bibles, let's go to Matthew chapter 5. In Matthew chapter 5, let's just kind of jump in and join in on Jesus' sermon with this farmer. And listen to what the Bible says. Jesus says, you have heard it said, meaning this, hey, in the Old Testament, in the Bible, the very words of God, you have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. He's quoting there Exodus chapter 21. He's quoting Deuteronomy chapter 19, an Old Testament law that was established to protect people from revenge on one another. So let me give you an example. Let's say I go to Krispy Kreme Donuts, which is very likely, right? I go and I get a box of donuts, and I come over here to the church, and I'm getting ready for Wednesday night. And let's say one of our sound guys like Logan or Will looks at my box without asking, they take a donut, right? And a couple things. I don't know how to count well, but I know of my dozen donuts, when one of them's gone, I didn't eat them, right? And I begin to notice one's gone. I figure out it's old Logan back there. That little guy waited, so I walked away, and he stole one of my donuts. So I go to his house, and I burn it down, right? Like, you look at that, and you go, Anthony, maybe that's just a little bit too extreme, right? This is exactly what that law is addressing. It's talking about the extremes of unfair revenge and retaliation for something that's done against you. So Jesus says, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And he goes on and says this, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. Now, real quick, before we kind of miss the heart of what's going on, Jesus is talking about kind of in a legal context here. And he's not saying just be a pushover, be abused, or taking advantage of. Literally what he's saying here is do not repay evil with evil. Don't repay evil with evil. Jesus says, hey, listen, we're going to stop this here. Do not resist an evil person. In fact, James 4, 1 Peter 5 reminds us that we're supposed to resist evil. But in the context of Jesus' sermon, he's saying, hey guys, listen, when somebody does evil against you, man, the way to handle that is not to give evil back. And he goes, and listen, this is a counterculture message, not only for those who heard him that day and for the farmer, but for us today. Listen to what he says. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. Now you're like, dude, somebody hits me. I've only got 3 cheeks left and I'm wearing them out, right? Yeah, if somebody hits, I'm hitting them back. But here's what Jesus is saying. And what we understand of this is what happens when a right-handed man comes across your face with a smack. And in Jewish culture, that was symbolic of a deep insult. It was insulting. In fact, we see this again with Jesus in John chapter 18. As he stands before the mock trial before the religious leaders, one of the religious guards, as Jesus is answering questions, takes his hand and he backhands Jesus as a sign and an insult to Jesus. And so you know what Jesus is saying here? Man, when someone insults you greatly, listen, even at the greatest of all insults, man, turn the other cheek. And he goes on, he begins to teach this incredibly counterculture message. And he goes on and says this, and if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. He's saying, listen, if somebody seeks to do evil against you and take your shirt, man, give me your coat. Give me your coat as well. And here's where we camp out tonight. And here also is the vision for 2017 for our high school ministry, the direction we're going to go. And he says this, and if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. And right in the heart of Jesus' message is this counterculture way for you and I to love and to serve people. And I see 3 challenges as a farmer sits there that day and he listens to this message. Let's just suppose he's sitting there listening to the message of Jesus. He's going to hear 3 challenges out of these few verses, these few sentences out of Jesus' message. The first is this: break the cycle. The second, take the high road. And the third is go the 2nd mile. Hey students, man, I tell you this, the challenge from tonight's message is for you and I to know how to break the cycle, to take the high road so that you and I can go the 2nd mile in being used of God to accomplish in what He wants in our homes, in our communities, in this world. What does it look like for us to go the 2nd mile? Well, let's go back to our farmer. Let's talk about what it means to break the cycle. Look at verse 38. You have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Listen to me. God enacts this law to protect not only the person who was insulted or hurt from vengeance, but also the person who was the offender. Meaning this, God enacted this law so that those who had something done against them, those who have been harmed, those who have been stolen against, those who have been lied upon, God enacted this law so that they were protected from their very own revenge and vengeance against somebody else. God says, hey, listen, when you're living in my community, I'm going to take vengeance out of your hand and remind you that vengeance belongs to me. We're going to put it in somebody else's hand. Because you know what? In our vengeance, in our anger for somebody doing us wrong, man, I tell you, we can act pretty crazy. We can be pretty unfair. And we can be pretty selfish. Remember? You stole my donut. I burned down your house, right? It just doesn't quite add up. And so we see God enacting a law that means pretty incredible in the time in which God speaks it to His people. And listen to this, because God knows that even by our sinful nature, you and I desire retaliation and revenge. It's in our very nature that when someone hurts us, and we want to hurt them back just as much, if not more. Right? It's like, man, somebody started a rumor about you. They done lied about you. It's bad. Like you're a Clemson fan. No, I'm kidding. It's a bad rumor. I saw you drew back there and I had to do that. But this rumor is really bad. It's not to joke about. You hear it, and in your mind you say, death penalty. I'm going to ask for the death penalty. You say, man, that's a little crazy, but you know what the truth is? We may not ask for the death penalty, but that person might as well be dead to us. You're going to lie about me? Wait till you hear what I'm going to say about you. Wait till it comes back to you. Man, what I'm going to tell people about that I know about you. Wait till it comes back when I start a rumor that's far greater than the one you even started. And do you kind of see this vicious cycle that happens? Why? Because in our sin nature, when we're hurt, we want to hurt other people. In our sin nature, when somebody does us wrong, we want to retaliate. We want to get revenge. And you know what Jesus is saying in this message? Man, break the cycle. Stop going down that road with one another. Because here's the truth. When you and I go down that road of trying to hurt somebody because they've hurt us, we wind up getting even more hurt, even more damaged in the process. So God enacts a law that says, guys, I am going to protect you from this. And see, if you're not careful, you go, well, man, this is cool because Jesus is coming. He's taken away all the law. Well, Matthew 5 later on says this in verse 17. Jesus said, Do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I've not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. What Jesus is saying, you've heard it said back in Deuteronomy and Exodus, an eye for an eye, a truth for the truth. Listen to me. That's the law, but let me tell you the heart behind it. Let me tell you how you live that out day in and day out in your life. And you know what he's challenging to do? Hey guys, break the cycle. Be counterculture to what's going on around you. Have you ever heard this little saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me? That's just stupid. Because you know what, the older you get, the more you realize that there's times where I'd rather take sticks and stones and broken bones than the insult and the hurt and the pain that come from words. Listen, sticks and stones may break bones, it may break skin, it may cause bruising. But words that people use against us to tear us down and to hurt us hurt more deeply than stones and sticks can reach. And whoever wrote that, man, with the best of all intentions, never knew really the hurt that comes from a great insult, a great pain in our life. You know, I think of, man, back in my day, goodness, there in my day in middle school and high school, the one thing that ticked me off the most were your mama jokes. Have you ever heard of your mama jokes? Man, I'm going to tell you something. I love my mama. And I'd have this kid go, and he don't even know my mama. He'd go, your mama's so fat, she jumped up in the air and got stuck. And I'm like, let's go now. You know, I'm going to beat your head in. I'm going to beat your head. But you know what happens? Listen to me. People will use words, and they'll talk about people you love, and they'll begin to tear down and seek to destroy us. Man, they'll insult you. Man, they'll backhand you. They'll insult you. And what begins to happen is we begin to get angry and resentful and bitter, and we're to the place where we go, man, if you think that hurt me, wait till I hurt you. And we start giving ourselves self-inflicted wounds when we try to retaliate that we never recover from. I've heard this. Revenge and retaliation in our own hands is like drinking poison, expecting it to kill the other person. Because in the end, man, it only winds up killing us. And so Jesus in his message is saying this, guys, break the cycle of hurt. Break the cycle of retaliation. Tit for tat, going back and forth, seeing who can hurt each other the most. He's saying break the cycle. And you say, well, Anthony, how do I break that cycle? Man, I've got friends. Man, this girl stole my boyfriend. This guy, man, he talked bad about me. And these people are picking on. I mean, how is it that I begin to break the cycle? You ready? Here's what I want to challenge you to do. Instead of seeking law, start with love. Listen to me. Instead of seeking an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, start thinking about love. Now, I want you to hear me. Nowhere in this is there room for abuse. Nowhere in this is there room for pacifism. Jesus said, if one man compels you to go a mile, go with him too. You know what Jesus didn't say? Go with him as long as he wants you to. And nowhere am I advocating that. But I'm talking about in relationship with one another, when words and rumors and insults begin to tear us down and tear us apart. When offenses are made, when people are just cruel and mean at times. And I'll be honest with you, like I said last week, man, some of the biggest bullies are in the church. In this very room, there are students, and with your words, you will make fun of anybody and everybody to make yourself look good. And you're nothing but a bully. And you look nothing like Jesus when you do that. Some of you have been product to it. Somebody tearing you down. If I had $1 for every student who sat in front of me and said, I want to kill myself. Why is that? Because people are so mean. Today, in my office. How do we break this cycle? Guys, you know what? We stop looking to the law and we start loving people. We start loving people. You know, anybody can go 1 mile in their faith. But it's in the second mile where you and I begin to break the cycle of destroying one another with our insults and our words. I want to read a story to you about a man who kind of went the second mile. And I say, this is a book I read a couple times. I love it. And if you guys ever ask me, Anthony, what's a great book for me to read? I love this. But listen to the story of a pretty incredible missionary. This guy was a pioneer missionary. His last name was Judson. And listen to his story just real quick. It says, with his only wife, Judson went as a pioneer into the land of millions, where there was not any known Christians at the time. They labored, listen, him and his wife only, labored 6 long months. They were soul-crushing, heartbreaking years before their first convert came to Christ. Listen, for 6 years, they worked in this land before ever seeing one person come to Jesus Christ. Listen to his story. You ready? Judson had to master the complex Burmese language without the aid of textbooks. On the mission field, he suffered the untimely deaths of 2 wives, 3 children, and a number of co-workers. Judson was incarcerated for nearly 2 years in a squalid prison where for most of the 2 years he hung upside down by his feet for those 2 years. His few Burmese followers faced the constant threat of persecution, and still Judson persevered in his work of preaching and of translation. He returned home only one time, back to Boston. And someone came up to him and said, hey, listen, do you think the prospects are bright for speedy conversion of the heathen? Hey, listen, Judson, do you think those lost pagan people, any of them really going to get saved? And listen to what he said. As bright as the promises of God, there are going to be people saved. And listen to this testimony. Amazingly, after Judson's death, the Burmese government took a survey and recorded 210,000 Christians in a place where not one Christian was before he came. And do you know that to this day, there are nearly 4 million Burmese believers because of course, of what Christ did on the cross, but also because of a man who, despite insult and injury, went the second mile, broke the cycle of retaliation, and loved Jesus and loved people. Jesus is saying to a farmer, to a student, and to a youth pastor, break the cycle. He's also saying this, take the high road. Look what he says here, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person, right? Don't return evil for evil. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. When someone insults you, leave open the opportunity you're going to get insulted again. Hey, but don't insult them back. I mean, don't go down that road. Take the high road. Jesus is saying, instead of getting even with one another, give grace. Give grace to one another. Grace is something given to us that we don't deserve. Something given to us we don't deserve. Our First Lady, Michelle Obama, who's on her way out, they've served 8 years in the White House. She said something amidst the campaign, and I'm not interjecting politics at all, but I remember a statement she said that has stuck with me. A statement last night that President Obama in his last address to the nation said, he said to his daughters that the most important job he's ever had was being their daddy. And listen, I can fight tooth and nail about what I think about policies. But man, it's a good word. Listen, Michelle Obama said this one time. When it comes to politics, when they go low, we go high. And what she was talking about is that old proverb, taking the high road. Listen, the high road is more difficult. The high road is not easy. Few people take it, and in fact, in politics, we rarely see anybody ever take that. But the question is that when it comes to going the second mile, when it comes to being counterculture, man, how is it that you and I can take the high road in seeking to break the cycle of retaliation one against another? Well, there's a few things I wrote down. First of all, for you and I to be able to take the high road, you and I need to quit being so sensitive and realize that the only safe space you and I need is found right in the heart and the will of God. Listen to me. You and I need to be careful of how offended we get all the time. You and I need to recognize the great enemy of us going the second mile, the great enemy of us breaking the cycle, the great enemy of us taking the high road. We need to recognize that, man, you and I are all too often way too offended. We feel like we're entitled. How dare you not believe as I believe? How dare you not speak as I speak? We have this entitlement. I should exist in a world where there's never an insult. When the truth is, Jesus said, man, they persecute me, they will persecute you. If they insult it, they're going to insult you. Part of taking the high road is to know that the very enemy of you and I going the second mile is how offended at times we get, how entitled at times we feel. And the truth is, you and I come to the very place where there's a selfishness involved in our life that we just need to get rid of. That's how we begin to take the high road. I love what C.S. Lewis said. Think of this. When somebody insults you, it's like if somebody came up to me and went, you know what? You're fat. I'd be like, how dare? And I'd go home and look in the mirror and go, dude's pretty right. You know, I get that, right? It's like, you're bald. No, you. And then I go look in the mirror and I'm like, yeah. Probably not too far from the truth, right? You know what? That's the truth about most insults. Let me read C.S. Lewis's quote to you real quick. Listen to this. He said, if any man think ill of you or think bad of you, he goes on and says this, do not be angry with him, for you are far worse than even he think you to be. Isn't that good? Like, so if somebody goes out there and like, you're a jerk, really in your heart you should go, if he only knew. You know, like, but I could be, because the truth is listen, guys, every single person in this room, every single person you encounter, we are all broken in 1,000 different ways. You come up, say the worst things you can about me. And honestly, in my mind, it's not going to beat the sinner I know I can be, that God's saved. So when it comes to taking the high road, guys, be careful how offended, how entitled, and how selfish we become to our rights in conversations like that. The second thing is ask this question. How do you take the high road and go on the second mile? Ask yourself this question. How would you want God to treat you? Man, can you believe what she did to me? Man, I'm never going to talk to her again. Listen, I'm never going to make eye contact. In fact, I'm going to spend every last minute, every last social media post, everything, every text, every phone call to destroy them. But I thank God he forgave me. How we take the high road? Those of us who forgive much have been forgiven much. Remember, we don't seek law, we seek love. Listen to what the Bible says here in Matthew 7:12. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. Man, we got to take the high road. Last part of this segment, how to take the high road, the second mile, is of this, Ephesians 4:32, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as Christ forgave you. Hey guys, listen, the second mile is also about taking the high road. And I want you to hear me. You and I need to be actively forgiving people, even when they've done us wrong, even when they've hurt us. Do you know why? Because even their wrong against us does not touch the rebellion and the wrong and the sin that I have done against God the Father. And the Bible says that he demonstrated his love for me in this. Even while I was yet a sinner, a rebel, a treasonous man, a wretch, Christ died for me. Man, I hear sometimes students will get upset, and man, they'll just blast somebody for hurting them. And I just go like this: oh, remember, those who've been forgiven much, forgive much in other people. Jesus challenges us to take the high road. Let me read a passage from Paul in Romans chapter 12. If you take notes, write this down. Romans 12:17. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Man, isn't that so counterculture? God help you if you're a Democrat. God help you if you like Donald Trump. It's amazing how offended we are. Even something like politics. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Hey, listen to me. Ready? Anybody can go 1 mile in faith. Anybody can go 1 mile in faith. But it's in the second mile that you're going to find the high road. Now, the farmer is listening to Jesus' sermon. He goes back to his field. Begins to work the next morning. When all of a sudden, come in the different direction, the sun begins to dance off of a metal object. And in his heart he goes, oh no, that Roman soldier wasn't gone for long. Looks down the road, he says this, you know what? Just yesterday Jesus told me to go the second mile. And so in his mind, instead of going, he better not stop here, something begins to happen, because you see, he's going to break the cycle. He's going to take the high road, and he decides, I'm going to go the second mile and give what Jesus taught me a chance. And so instead of going, man, he better not come, he begins to whisper the prayer from his heart to God, would you send him this way? As he begins to work the land, instead of looking away from him, not making eye contact, he looks up and he spots him down the road. In his mind, he goes, you know what? I'm going to break this cycle. I'm going to take the high road. I'm going to go the second mile. So he looks over that and goes, hey, come here. Begins to walk towards him, meets him out on the roadway. Says, hey man, let me carry you. Let me carry your stuff. Soldier disregards it, fine. Throws it at his feet. Instead of walking 3 paces behind, this Jewish farmer walks up beside the soldier. And instead of heaping curses and insults onto that guy, building up the hatred and the intolerance and the fumings, he walks up beside the soldier with all that armor. He says, hey man, what's your name? How long you been serving Rome? What was your last battle like? Tell me about your family. And all of a sudden, he begins a conversation. Gladly bearing a load, gladly walking the 1,000 paces, gladly going that mile with a Roman soldier who's oppressed, who's demeaned him, who's insulted him. Yet he gladly bears it. And he sees the mile marker up ahead, and he still has all this baggage from the Roman soldier. And he keeps walking, and he walks past the mile marker, and the soldier goes, that's all you have to carry. He goes, no, let's just keep on walking together. And the soldier begins to say, man, something's different about you. And the farmer goes, you know what, soldier? Yesterday I heard a man Jesus teach. He taught about breaking the cycle. Sorry how mad I was at you yesterday. Talked about taking a high road. Man, forgive me for even the thoughts I had towards you. I'm going to go to the second mile marker with you. You know what that farmer just did? He put into practice what Jesus taught. And he gave credence to who Jesus was in his life. He went the second mile with someone who didn't deserve it, someone who didn't even invite it, so that he could talk with him about Jesus, so that he could point him to Jesus. You know, the law compels us to go 1 mile, but love compels us to go the second mile. The truth is with the law, we're pressed into service because we have to. With love, we begin to see the privilege it is to serve. With the law, we're left offended, entitled, insulted. But with love, we see that offense as an opportunity to point somebody to Jesus and to go the second mile. Go the second mile. You know, my question tonight is, what's the second mile for you? Hey, listen, you showed up, right? This is your first mile. Good job. You come to church. You crack open a Bible from time to time. But really, what is it that you're missing out on? What areas of your life of sin and self do you need to break the cycle of in Christ? What areas of your life do you need to begin in your relationships to take the high road when people even go low? And where is it that you and I need to go the second mile? To break the cycle, to take the high road, and to seek the Lord in the second mile. Hey, listen, let me close with this. You know, this is not the last time we see this law of compelling a person to take up a Roman soldier's baggage and carry it against their will. We go to Matthew chapter 17 and Mark chapter 15. Let me tell you what we find. You ready? We find a man who claimed to be the Son of God, beaten within an inch of his life. He has been whipped. The flesh on his back is exposed. He is bleeding profusely. He is gasping for breath. And on top of that, he's got a beam on his back. A cross that he's to be nailed to. But you see, a problem happened. As he was taking that cross, those beams, from the praetorium in the governor's palace where they beat him good, he was on a road to the place where ultimate, to Calvary, to Golgotha, where they were going to crucify him. And though he was fully God, the fullness of his humanity broke underneath the weight of those beams and the beating that he took. And so we see a Roman soldier compel a man out of the crowd by the name of Simon of Cyrene to pick up his baggage so he didn't have to. The same message that Jesus taught on and said, hey guys, instead of giving even, give grace, would compel Simon of Cyrene to pick up God's instrument of grace, Jesus and his cross, and compel him to carry it to the place where Jesus would be crucified. You know what? Jesus went the second mile for you. He went the second mile for me. He died on the cross and he rose again. Let me ask you this. Isn't he worth the second mile from us? You say, well, Anthony, what areas? You know, I just wrote these down for our vision is that you and I need to go the second mile of faith, practicing our faith through prayer and Bible study, connecting and serving at his church, loving our community. We need to go the second mile in our families, practicing our faith in our homes. Talk about a place where there's retaliation, revenge. Man, we need to break that cycle. We need to take the high road. We need to love and give grace inside of our homes. We need to go the second mile with our friends. learn how to practice our faith, to let our faith rub off on people, we need to go the second mile. We need to go the second mile for people and to practice our faith by doing what an old farmer would do after hearing Jesus and point people to Jesus and invite them to follow him. Let's pray together, can we? Let's pray.